Good day and welcome to episode 17, Exploring Stirling. A short drive from the beautiful town of Callander in the heart of the Trossachs is Stirling, and it's time to explore some history, all of which surrounds the control of Stirling Castle. I'm visiting the Wallace Monument, Battle of Bannockburn, and Stirling Castle. Join me in a day of exploration in history. Visiting the Abbey Craig, where William Wallace planned his attack to retake Stirling Castle. Walking up the steep path known as the Wallace Way. Exploring the wood carvings along the way is just fun.
Animals from the first farmers, dating back to 3800 BC. Scotland's metal workers date back to 2000 BC. Okay, so this is people and invaders of Scotland. They don't have any heads. A bench depicting the Battle of Stirling Bridge.
The builders used a railway to bring the stone quarried on site to the top of the hill. The Wallace Monument is a Scottish baronial architectural style and stands 220 feet tall, with 246 stone steps to the crown spire.
Time to go in and buy a ticket.
Climbing the stone stairs up the Wallace Monument to view 3 rooms or halls, each with unique exhibits. And then, the crown spire and some awesome views of Stirling. The Hall of Arms is an exhibit of weapons from the 13th century, and a replica of the Wallace sword is found here. Wallace is credited with the victory at Stirling Bridge in 1297. Up the stone steps to the Hall of Heroes, with sculpted busts of the Scottish heroes, including King Robert the Bruce.
King Robert the Bruce.
On display is a replica of the king's double-handed broadsword. The Royal Chamber is an exhibit of how the Battle of Stirling Bridge was fought and won. During the tour of Stirling Castle, our tour guide explained the battle for Stirling Bridge.
I just want to point out below us, the River Forth, you can see it, the sea River Forth meandering through the valley below. And the hill on the other side, that's known as the Abbey Craig. And the monument, as you see the tower on the top of the hill, that's the National Wallace Monument. It was dedicated to great Scottish national hero Mel Gibson, or William Wallace, as we know him. William Wallace, a key figure in the Scottish Wars of Independence. On the 11th of September 1297, William Wallace appeared on the other side of the River Forth. Him and another man, Andrew Murray, brought their armies to take back Scotland from the Scots. The English were right here in the castle, and they marched out. The cavalry went first. They marched out across Stirling Bridge, which was in those days a very narrow wooden bridge, and they could only cross 2 by 2. They went out and started to gather in the field just below, just underneath the cannons there, where you see a number of posts sticking up. Cavalry went first, and they had an agreed method of fighting. Both cavalries would line up and face each other and charge. The people with most men left standing at the end of the day were generally the winners. But Wallace didn't have a lot of cavalry. They didn't believe in following the rule books. He allowed about half the English cavalry to cross, and before they'd start to get into formation to fight, he attacked them. His men came down from the slopes of that hill and attacked them in that field below. It was in the loop of the River Forth, so they couldn't fully line up, they couldn't deploy. Many were lost on the battlefield, and many more drowned as they tried to escape across the River Forth. and drowned due to their heavy armour. So on the 11th of September 1297, the castle was back in Scots hands.
The view from the crown spire is beautiful. And now, down all 246 stone steps to the tower shop. And then, off to the castle. Welcome to Stirling Castle. This castle fortress is so large, a model gives a good perspective of what the castle looked like. Entering the castle, there are several gates one must pass through to get to the courtyard for the tour. We meet at the well. There is so much to see here, and one needs to take the tour to really understand the castle and not get lost. I have over 2 hours of video from this tour, and this is just a small glimpse of Stirling Castle that I enjoyed. Did you notice the mythical unicorns in the Scottish crest?
How old is the castle? How long has there been something on this site? And we don't really know. We don't have a lot of early evidence. We think there may have been something here many as 2,000 years. The Romans may even have had something on this site. The earliest evidence we do have is written evidence. In the year 1110, King Alexander I dedicated a chapel to his mother, Margaret, who would become Saint Margaret on this site. So we know there was a castle here in 1110. But why here? Why up on this rock, so far away from the transport links where it would have been nice and handy? You're standing on a volcanic rock. It's about 400 million years old, and it was shaped by glaciers. Glaciers, huge rivers of ice that sculpted the volcanic rock into what's known as a crag and tail. It's got 3 cliffs around the sides and a gentle slope out to the south. Made it very easy to defend. And it overlooks the River Forth. It meant if you wanted to take a large body of men, an army, north to south or south to north, you had to come through Stirling and cross the bridge that's just below us. Old maps of Scotland show the north almost like an island, joined to the south by that little narrow bridge. I'd like to take you through the archway now, just to explain a couple of the key battles in Scottish history. Ones that we won anyway. Can I check? Can everybody understand me okay? Can everybody understand my broad Scots brogue? That's grand. So on the 11th of September 1297, the castle was back in Scots hands. But not for long. So the castle changed hands many times, at least 8 times during the Scottish Wars of Independence. But by 1304, it was back in Scottish hands. Once more, Edward of England came north. But this time, he brought catapults and trebuchets, huge siege engines, and started to bombard the castle. But the garrison inside held out. They didn't surrender until Edward started to assemble his largest, mightiest siege engine, a huge trebuchet, nicknamed the Warwolf. The Warwolf took about 50 carpenters and 3 months to assemble. When it was assembled, the garrison surrendered, or they tried to surrender. Edward had a new toy and they really wanted to play with it. He refused their surrender and ordered them back inside the castle. The Warwolf could fire missiles weighing as much as 300 pounds and Greek fire, large balls of flame that have stuck to and burnt anything it came into contact with. Eventually, Edward did accept the surrender and the castle was back in English hands. And it was to remain so for the next 10 years. Once more, the English came north, this time under Edward II, the son of Edward I. And they met Robert the Bruce on the 23rd of June 1314, about 2 miles in that direction. The Battle of Bannockburn. Battle of Bannockburn was a 2-day battle, which was very unusual for medieval battles. On the first day, the vanguard arrived, but Bruce had dug a series of pits with pikes in them, and he used the land well, so the English army couldn't fully deploy and attack, and they couldn't get through. The second day, they moved to the lower ground, known as the Carse, the valley, tried to get through that way. Bruce had trained his men in a different tactic. He had arranged them in huge circles of spearmen with large pikes pointing out in all directions, a bit like a giant hedgehog. He trained them to move and stay in formation as they moved. Again, the English cavalry tried to push through, but they couldn't. They were lost against the Schildkrauts. The day was won for Robert the Bruce. The castle was back in Scottish hands.
This is the wall walk.
So we've arrived in the royal part of the castle. You'd have to be very important to get this far, to the inner close. We're surrounded by 4 buildings built by 3 different kings. All of them called James, because we like a bit of originality in the naming of the kings in Scotland. Over about 100 years to the west, this is King James IV's private residence. The King's House, as we say in Scotland. Today known as the King's Old Building. It was built in 1496 as a private residence of King James IV. Go back to King James IV. After he built his house, he needed a place to have his dinner, to celebrate, to wine and dine people. So he built this magnificent banqueting hall. This is King James IV's Great Hall. That was completed in 1503. Place of banquets, celebrations, parties and even parliaments. I'd like to invite you inside the Great Hall now to walk in the footsteps of lords and ladies. So welcome to the inside of King James IV's Great Hall. Probably the first thing you noticed was this magnificent hammer beam ceiling up above you. The hammer beam is the one that's horizontal, sticking out from the wall. People in the hall would have been warmed by these 4 fires, but the King and the Queen had the largest, grandest fire just behind their thrones.
The ceilings in the royal buildings are beautiful and stunning. Exploring the royal residences illustrates the beautiful tapestries and ceilings of this period. There are some great guides in 1500s royal dress to chat with.
And you are now standing in the Queen's bedchamber, but it's not when the Queen sleeps.
Visit the Stirling Head Gallery to see how these exquisite ceiling carvings have been restored. Thanks for watching Tommy's Holiday. Next stop, St. Andrews.